Most people assume their money problems come from not earning enough or not being good with numbers. But if you look closely, income and math usually aren't what break things first. What actually happens is simpler. Money comes in without a plan. Bills go out automatically. Subscriptions renew on their own. Decisions get made in isolation. And without anything coordinating them, margin quietly disappears even on a decent paycheck. I'm Alex. Today we'll walk through a 12-week financial reset, not as motivation, but as a system for restoring margin and letting progress compound quietly. Week by week, we'll examine the structures that allow money to work in the background, where stability gradually turns into quiet wealth over time. We start with the least comfortable part, seeing where you actually stand right now. Week 1, establishing the baseline. Week 1 is about removing guesswork. Before anything changes, you need to see how money actually behaves in your life, not how it feels like it behaves. Pull the last 3 months of activity from everywhere money touched. Checking accounts, credit cards, loan payments, subscriptions you forgot existed. Open them side by side. Patterns appear faster when everything is visible at once. Now sort every expense into 3 groups. Fixed costs come first. Rent, utilities, insurance, groceries. These move slowly and usually dominate the total. Next are discretionary costs. Eating out, ride shares, shopping, travel. These move fast and quietly expand. Last is debt. Credit cards, student loans, personal loans. These don't just spend money, they tax the future. Here's the shift most people miss. You're not looking for shame. You're looking for averages. What does a normal month actually cost to run your life? Once income is placed next to that number, something clicks. The gap between what comes in and what goes out becomes obvious. That gap is not abstract. It's your financial margin, or the lack of it. This is why businesses track revenue and expenses obsessively. They don't rely on intention, they rely on numbers. Most people discover surprises here. A forgotten subscription, ride shares adding up to a car payment, groceries quietly doubling. Nothing is broken yet. But now it's visible, and visibility is leverage. Week 2, reducing friction. Week 2 is not about cutting everything. It's about targeting what actually moves the needle. Take your expenses and sort them from largest to smallest. This changes the conversation immediately. Saving $10 on coffee feels productive, but it rarely changes outcomes. A single category near the top usually does. Consider a typical month totaling around $4,650. Rent sits at the top and barely moves. That's normal. But just below it, patterns appear. $225 on ride shares, $750 on car and insurance combined. Several hundred spread across eating out, shopping, and subscriptions. Now the question shifts. Not what can I eliminate, but what can I reduce by 10 to 30% without breaking my life? Ride shares are a common leap. They don't feel expensive because each trip is small. Over a month, they quietly rival a utility bill. Insurance is another. Most people never comparison shop after the first sign-up. One phone call can free up $100 a month. Shopping and eating out work the same way. No dramatic cuts, just fewer automatic decisions. If you remove $400 a month this way, that's $4,800 a year. That money doesn't disappear. It creates options. Debt shrinks faster. Savings grow sooner. This week isn't about sacrifice. It's about reclaiming control where it was leaking unnoticed. Week 3, automation takes over. Week 3 is where discipline gets replaced by structure. Open a high-yield savings account meant only for short-term money. Cash you'll need within 1 to 5 years belongs here. Right now, competitive accounts pay around 3.8 to 4%. $10,000 sitting there earns roughly $400 a year without extra effort. That's not investing. That's correcting inefficiency. Next comes automation. When income hits your checking account, decisions should already be made. Bills flow out. But before spending starts, money needs to move itself. Set automatic transfers the same day you get paid. A portion goes to savings. A portion goes to investing. Even 10% of take-home pay changes behavior. 5% to savings. 5% to investments. Adjust the numbers later. The system matters more than the amount. This works for the same reason retirement plans work. You don't miss what never lingers in checking. The temptation window disappears. People who try to save manually rely on willpower. People who automate rely on timing. Once this is in place, something subtle happens. Spending adapts downward without conscious restriction. The money available becomes the money used. That's the shift. You stop asking whether you should save. The system answers first. From here on, progress compounds quietly even in months when motivation is low. A quiet decision point. Before moving forward, pause for a moment. Imagine something unexpected happens. Your income increases tomorrow. Not dramatically, but noticeably. An extra $1,000 a month, consistent and reliable. Nothing else in your life changes yet. Now notice your first instinct. Option 1. The money blends into daily life. A few upgrades, slightly nicer habits. Nothing reckless, just easier spending. The month still ends tight. Option 2. The money gets pushed aggressively. Extra debt payments, bigger investments, faster moves. Progress feels urgent, but pressure rises with it. Option 3. The money is held back at first. It goes into savings. Then automation adjusts. Decisions slow. Capacity increases before commitments do. Most people don't consciously choose. They drift into one of these patterns automatically. The outcome isn't about the amount. It's about timing. Immediate consumption increases fragility. Aggressive optimization increases stress. Delayed use preserves flexibility. This moment matters because the same choice appears again and again. Raises, bonuses, side income, windfalls. Which option you lean toward reveals how you handle surplus. And how you handle surplus determines whether progress compounds or disappears quietly. Week 4. Neutralizing high-interest debt. Week 4 is about stopping the quiet drain most people underestimate. High-interest debt doesn't feel urgent because it doesn't demand attention every day. It works in the background, charging rent on your future income. Credit cards are the most common version. Average rates now sit above 21%. That means balances grow even when spending stops. Start by listing every balance and its interest rate. No rounding, no estimates. Precision matters here. Run the numbers on small changes. A $2,500 balance paid at the minimum lingers for years. Increase the payment by $75 a month, and the payoff time drops by months, sometimes close to a year. Interest saved becomes immediate return, not theory. Set payments to automatic. Debt disappears faster when it's treated like a fixed bill, not a choice. Then make a call most people skip. Contact the card issuer. Ask for a temporary rate reduction. Mention competitive offers. Loyalty often matters more than expected. 5 minutes on the phone can erase hundreds in interest. This isn't about punishment or guilt. It's about efficiency. Paying down high-interest debt beats almost any low-risk investment. Once the drain slows, cash flow starts behaving differently. And that creates room for the next phase. Week 5, building the first buffer. Week 5 shifts the focus from fixing leaks to creating protection. The target here is simple: $1,000 in an emergency fund. Not because it solves every problem, but because it stops small problems from becoming expensive ones. A car repair, a medical bill, a sudden travel need. Without a buffer, these land on credit cards and restart the cycle. Nearly 6 in 10 Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency. Crossing that line changes how money feels. 4 digits in savings creates breathing room. Speed matters more than elegance. Redirect the savings you freed up earlier. Sell items sitting unused. Pick up short-term extra income. The source doesn't matter. The buffer does. Keep this money in a high-yield savings account. It should be accessible but not mixed with daily spending. Even at 4%, the goal isn't growth. It's stability. For those already past this point, the frame widens. 3 to 6 months of living expenses becomes the real shield. Not all at once. Gradually, automatically. What changes after this week isn't the balance. It's behavior. When emergencies stop causing panic decisions, slow down. And slower decisions are usually cheaper. This buffer doesn't make you rich. It makes everything else work better. Week 6, putting capital to work. Week 6 is where idle money starts changing roles. Over the past century, stocks have outperformed most other asset classes over long periods. Not every year, not smoothly, but consistently enough to matter. Average annual returns land around 8 to 10% when time is allowed to do its job. This week is not about picking winners, it's about exposure. Open a brokerage account and choose a simple structure. Broad index funds tied to the S&P 500 give access to hundreds of large U.S. companies in one move. One purchase spreads risk. One habit builds ownership. The advantage here is not excitement. It's removal of decision fatigue. No monitoring charts, no reacting to headlines, just regular buying. Automation comes back into play. The same transfers set earlier now feed investments. $100 a month, 500, 1,000. The number matters less than consistency. Run the math forward. $1,000 invested monthly for 30 years at 8% grows to roughly 1.49 million. That result doesn't come from brilliance. It comes from time and repetition. People who wait for confidence usually miss years. People who start small gain momentum quietly. The market rewards patience more than intelligence, especially when emotions are kept out of the process. Once investing becomes routine, something flips. Money stops feeling static. It starts working even while nothing else changes. Week 7. Expanding the income ceiling. Week 7 changes the direction of the conversation. Up to now, progress came from control. This week is about capacity. There's a limit to how much you can cut. There's far less limit on how much you can earn. Start with the most direct lever: salary. If it's been over a year since the last adjustment, inflation has already taken a raise from you. Research comparable roles. Bring numbers, not emotion. Even a modest increase compounds every month after. If growth stalls internally, mobility becomes leverage. Job changes every few years often produce 30 to 40% jumps in pay. Not instantly comfortable, but structurally powerful. Next comes supplemental income, freelance work, selling unused items, service-based work like pet sitting or delivery. These aren't permanent identities. They're temporary accelerators. Then there's skill leverage, coding, editing, sales design. Skills convert time into higher value output. Once learned, they don't reset each month. The key distinction this week is focus. Cost-cutting protects. Income growth expands. When income rises while expenses stay stable, the system bends in your favor. Savings accelerate. Investing becomes easier. Stress drops without dramatic lifestyle changes. This week isn't about hustle. It's about aligning effort with upside. Week 8. Defining the target. Week 8 turns vague progress into something measurable. Up to this point, money has been moving better. But movement without direction eventually stalls. This week is about choosing where the system is actually going. Write down one savings goal for the rest of the year. 1, not 10. Emergency fund debt payoff, down payment, or a specific cash buffer. The category matters less than clarity. Attach a number to it. If the goal is $8,000 and you already have $1,000, the remaining $7,000 isn't intimidating once it's broken down. Over 12 months, that's roughly $580 a month. Now, it's not a dream, it's a schedule. This is where friction shows up. The math will tell you if the goal fits the current structure or needs adjustment. That's useful information, not failure. There's also a behavioral edge here. People who write goals down and share them are far more likely to hit them. Accountability doesn't motivate, it stabilizes behavior. Tell someone you trust, a partner, a friend, even a note you'll revisit later. Once the target is defined, saving stops feeling like deprivation. It becomes execution. And when money has a job, it's much harder for it to disappear unnoticed. Week 9. Credit as a tool or a trap. Week 9 forces an honest assessment most people avoid. Credit cards don't fail people. Misalignment does. Used correctly, they reward consistency. Used carelessly, they charge rent on every mistake. In the best-case scenario, purchases flow through a card and get paid in full every month. No balance, no interest. In return, issuers offer cash back points, travel perks. That's free money for disciplined behavior. The problem appears when spending disconnects from cash. The average interest rate now sits above 21%. Carrying a balance turns convenience into a compounding penalty. The average American holds several $1,000s in revolving credit. At that rate, time works against you. This is why self-knowledge matters here more than rules. If overspending follows access, the safest move is distance. No card, no temptation. A middle ground exists. Start with a low limit. Use it for essentials only. Test behavior over 3 to 6 months. Patterns reveal themselves quickly. There's another layer people miss. Responsible use builds credit history. On-time payments make up roughly 35% of a credit score. That score quietly influences future interest rates on cars, homes, and businesses. Credit doesn't create wealth, but unmanaged credit can block it for decades. Week 10. Making progress visible. Week 10 introduces a number most people never track, even though it quietly decides their options. Net worth is simple. Assets minus liabilities. What you own minus what you owe. No opinions involved. Add up everything with value: cash, investments, retirement accounts, property. Then subtract every obligation: credit cards, loans, car balances, mortgages. What remains is the real snapshot. Here's why this matters. Income shows effort. Net worth shows direction. Someone earning $100,000 with heavy debt can be moving backward. Someone earning half that while accumulating assets can be moving forward faster. Use a basic tracker. Monthly works well. Quarterly also works. The interval matters less than consistency. Once you record the number, it starts behaving differently. Small changes become visible: a paid-off balance, a growing investment account, a shrinking liability. Progress stops being emotional and becomes measurable. Consider a simple example: a home worth $100,000, investments in cash totaling $25,000, a car loan of $30,000. Net worth lands at $95,000. That number will change slowly, then suddenly. This practice does something subtle. It shifts focus away from spending events and toward accumulation trends. When net worth becomes the scorecard, short-term noise loses power, and long-term decisions start making more sense. Week 11. Stress testing the system. Week 11 checks whether the changes actually held. By now, enough time has passed for habits to settle. That's why this week looks backward instead of forward. Pull the last 2 months of spending and line it up against the baseline from the start. Categorize everything again: fixed costs, discretionary spending, debt. The goal isn't perfection, it's drift detection. Most people expect improvement everywhere. What usually happens is more realistic. Some categories stay flat. A few improve. One or two quietly creep back up. That creep matters. It's often subtle. A few extra food deliveries, small convenience spending returning once attention fades. These don't feel like mistakes. They feel like normal life resuming. This review is where systems prove themselves. If spending stayed lower without constant effort, automation worked. If not, the leak tells you exactly where friction is missing. Make adjustments now, not later. Cancel the subscription that reappeared. Reset transfer amounts. Tighten one category instead of squeezing everything. This isn't about discipline. It's about feedback loops. Businesses review numbers regularly because systems decay without inspection. Once this check is done, confidence becomes earned. You're no longer hoping the plan works. You've watched it survive real months. That changes how the final stretch is approached. Week 12, extending the timeline. Week 12 is where short-term control turns into long-term direction. The past weeks stabilized cash flow. This one widens the lens. Think in 3 horizons: 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Each serves a different purpose. A 1-year goal is practical: building a $10,000 buffer, eliminating a remaining balance, reaching a specific savings number. These reinforce momentum. 5-year goals stretch identity: buying property, launching a business, hitting a net worth milestone like $100,000 or $250,000. These require consistency, not intensity. 10-year goals change behavior today: financial independence, location freedom, stepping away from work on your own terms. These aren't fantasies. They're directional anchors. Once goals are named, break them into monthly numbers. If a down payment is needed in 5 years, the math tells you exactly what must happen each month. No inspiration required. The final move is scheduling review points. Quarterly works well. Put them on a calendar. These check-ins prevent slow drift. This is where most plans fail, not from complexity, but from silence. When progress is reviewed regularly, 90 days doesn't end. It compounds. The reset becomes a rhythm, not an event. Key takeaways. This 12-week reset isn't about doing more. It's about removing friction from decisions that quietly shape outcomes. Once money is visible, it stops behaving mysteriously. Once spending is structured, small leaks lose their power. Automation replaces willpower. Buffers slow panic. Debt stops taxing the future. Investing becomes routine instead of intimidating. Income growth shifts the ceiling without forcing lifestyle inflation. Goals turn saving into execution. Reviews prevent drift before it compounds. The common thread is margin. Financial stress usually comes from operating too close to the edge, not from a lack of effort. This system creates space between income and expenses decisions, and emotion short-term noise and long-term direction. Nothing here depends on perfect behavior. It depends on systems that work even when attention fades. If this framework made sense, the next step isn't motivation, it's continuation. because when structure stays in place, progress tends to follow quietly.